Well, good morning and welcome back to another week on the allotment. It's been a busy week for me, work-wise, and on the allotment. And talking of work, I'm gonna, just as a little bit different, if you've been with me for the long haul, and this is my 99th video, you'll have seen me at work a couple of times before. But if you're new to the channel, or if you've got a bad memory, then I'm going to show you a few clips of me at work this past week. You may or may not find that interesting. It's a lovely place to work. Anyway, and a quick breeze around the vast greenhouse in my back garden. But on the plot, what's happening on the plot? Well, really the big news is I harvested my calabrese Monclano this week, the club root resistant broccoli. And I think I had about 10 plants, and they all came at once, which is just the way it is, because I didn't do little and often. I did a full batch, although I've got some more coming on, bigger plants in the greenhouse now. But anyway, I harvested it all and I took it home, and Cheryl and I had a very busy couple of hours blanching it all and freezing it all. So that's all stored in the freezers, ready for our Sunday dinners on the winter. The cauliflower, not so good. The cauliflower has been had by the slugs. I think I've got 2 heads still intact, and I'll have a look later. But anyway, so and Cheryl wants at least one of them today for dinner, although we've still got some of last year's in the freezer at home. So yeah, that bed's got to be redone and all that pulled out and put on the compost heap, etc. And it's just more of the same, a little bit of watering. I am getting better at watering less, but inevitably the squashes, the blueberries, the celery, there's all sorts, the sweet peas, the potatoes in the tubs, these things all need watering, and that goes on apace. But the one thing I've got going that I've never done before is the comfrey and the stinging nettle fertiliser, which is steeping in large tubs down by the compost heaps. And I had a look at them yesterday. Boy, they do stink. Well, is it the I don't know, whichever one I took the lid off. Wow. I mean, I've seen it on so many YouTubers' videos that it stinks. Well, I can confirm they're right, as if I ever doubted it. The other thing is, I spoke to Bridget recently, and she had a barrel thing that she'd stuffed all the comfrey in dry, and then she got a hole in the bottom and it was dripping out almost like a treacle. And that doesn't smell at all. So, I have here a large metal barrel. I'm going to drill a hole in the bottom of that, and I'm going to use that in the same way she does. I've still got, there's plenty of comfrey lying around on the vacant plot, and I'm going to cut all that today, put it in there, put a weight on it, drill a hole, and that's got to be a more civilised way of collecting my comfrey fertiliser. So we'll have a look at that later. Anyway, welcome along. I've got a few little interesting factoids to share with you along the way. But let's go and have a look at where I work. Welcome to the Wye Valley and my office every Wednesday. Now, granted, it doesn't always look this beautiful, but it is a stunning place to work. Fresh air, exercise, what's not to like? Cheers. I've been working as a self-employed gardener now for 11 years. This is my 11th summer after having left the army for 30 years. And I was lucky enough to get put in touch with the man who owns this estate. He'd had various chaps trimming the riverbanks and looking after his garden and his mother's garden and doing forestry and so on. And they'd all let him down, I believe, in one way or another. And I came to meet him and we toured the estate and we agreed a price. And I've been working for him ever since. And it's fantastic. I mean, trimming the riverbanks is hard physical labour. But it's not all trimming riverbanks. Like I say, there's a bit of forestry involved, especially in the winter. All sorts of different projects on his land. And the gardening. You know, the gardens are big, they're beautiful. And it's fascinating, interesting work. He's a wonderful fella to work for. He's very relaxed. He doesn't get uptight about things. And he pretty much now gives me the run of the place to do as I see fit. Occasionally he'll steer me in a specific area that he wants done. But generally, now that I know his land and the way he likes to run things, I'm left to my own devices for the 8 hours I'm here every Wednesday. So yeah, a little insight into my working day, albeit specifically on this estate in the Wye Valley, an area of outstanding natural beauty, and I think you can see why. Well, working here 11 years has given me, basically as a townie, an insight into the countryside. You know, I listen to the landowner and the problems he has with the land management and specifically the river. And over the 10 years, I've witnessed firsthand the decline in the number of fish. When I was strimming 10 years ago, I'd stop for 5 minutes, have a break, and you'd see several fish jump in the river, salmon. Now, I haven't seen a fish jump in the river since 2019. Didn't see one all of last year. And I haven't seen one this year. So I can see myself there is a decline. And it's down to a number of factors. Obviously there's more and more pressure on rivers. But the two main things are the number of sewage works they build in the Wye catchment because of the number of houses they're building, and chicken farms. There is a profusion of chicken farms way upriver, and of course all the thousands of tons of very nutrient rich waste from chickens finds its way into the rivers, you know, through runoff, etc. And it's nutrient rich and it causes algal blooms, and algal blooms suffocate the river. You know, this river used to be gin clear at this time of year, and now you can't see the bottom. There's a debris that lands on all the plant life, and the algae deoxygenates the river, which kills the fish. So yeah, it's a real shame to watch the decline of a beautiful river, and I think it's symptomatic of the whole country, where the pressures of overpopulation are having an effect on our countryside. And you know, the rivers are the arteries of the country, and it's a serious matter. Although, you know, looking at this beautiful view right now, it's hard to see the problems. Yeah, but it's a fascinating subject, and I get a real insight into the complicated issues from the landowner from a different perspective. I mean, obviously he has a biased view because he earns his money from the river, but it's interesting nevertheless.
A few years ago, when I was on my allotment, there was a lady sitting near the golf driving range, waiting for her husband, who was whacking balls up the range, I think. And she was watching me working, and it was a day like today, and I was sweating and digging and so on. And she came over and she said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question? Why do you bother growing all these fruits and vegetables when you can go to Tesco and buy them?" And you know, apart from the worrying lack of awareness and education on her part, I explained to her, if you go into Tesco and you pick up an apple, it's perfect. Nothing, there's no blemishes on it, nothing's attempted to eat it, not a bacteria, not a living organism has nibbled that apple. Now, why is that? It's because the apple is covered in herbicides, fungicides and pesticides. So nothing on the planet wants to eat it, and then Tesco sell it to us. And that's why I grow my own, because they're blemished, they're eaten, they're nibbled. Everything wants to eat them because they are wholesome, organic, and unbelievably good for you. Now, remembering that, I'd like to show you something. Alongside the river is a massive field of sweet corn or maize. Now, I have no idea what this crop is intended for, but I know this is my 11th summer, and every year the same crop is grown in the same field. It never has a fallow year, and they always grow the same crop. It never rotates. And look at the soil. Now, the farmer doesn't come along with his hoe and weed this lot, I guarantee you. Apart from the crop, not a single plant, weed, flower, nothing, but nothing is growing in this soil. Now, I don't know why that is, whether this is a Roundup ready crop or what, but I guarantee you the reason nothing but the crop is growing in this field is because of pesticides and fungicides and herbicides. This soil is dead to every living thing except what the farmer wants to grow in it. Interesting. And a reflection of modern agriculture, I think.
Well, just a few short clips of my Wednesday working day, and I'm an outdoor fella. I hate being indoors, and even on the worst day up at the working in and around the estate on the Wye Valley, even on the worst winter's day, I'd rather be outside in the elements. I've got the right kit to protect me, and I love it. But that family that I work for, they are a fascinating family, as are so many families that own these rather lovely, wonderful estate houses, and it's passed from generation to generation. And the man who is presently in there, his mother and father moved out the main house when it was time and moved into a cottage out the back. I say cottage. And the current incumbents, they've had 2 sons, and the eldest son will take over the estate in due course. But many years ago, there were 2 rather famous sons born to that family. One went on to join the Navy and became an admiral, and was called Admiral Rook. And he's the man who famously took Gibraltar from the Spanish. And indeed, I've stayed in HMS Rook, the officers' mess in Gibraltar, named after him. So there's a very famous son. A second son, I think the 2 boys were cousins. He went on to be a soldier, an army officer. He made general, and he was at the Battle of Waterloo with Wellington. And after the Battle of Wellington, if you don't know, after the Battle of Waterloo, Wellington commissioned a painting. There was a dinner where all the senior officers were invited in London at Wellington's home, and they were all invited along to celebrate the victory. And years later, Wellington commissioned a painter to paint this dinner to commemorate it. Well, of course, the dinner had come and gone, so this painter spent a long time, years, travelling the world, finding all these officers and doing pencil drawings of their portraits to go back and then insert those into the painting of this celebratory dinner. And the family that I work for have a copy of that. There's a limited edition copies. I've never seen it. I must ask to see it. Anyway, so, you know, I think it was James Rook, the man at Waterloo. But that's not the end of the story. A few years after the Battle of Waterloo, a man called Simon Bolivar, who was trying to kick the Spanish out of South America, came over to Britain, or I think he sent his agent, to recruit veterans from the battles, the Napoleonic Wars, to go over to South America to fight with Bolivar, hence the name Bolivia, against the Spanish. And this James Rook went over. And the two, he created what was known as the British Legions, and he had two officers to head these two legions. But these two British officers fell out with each other and had a duel. And Bolivar was so angry that he put James Rook in charge. Well, Rook took his army over the Andes Mountains and completely surprised the Spanish. They didn't expect that, and defeated the Spanish in various battles. So, you know, he was a very successful, I mean, you know, we just don't make men like that anymore, do we? Anyway, fast forward to the present day, and I believe it, I say present day, it was 1969, speaking to the mother of the man who now lives in the home who I work for. Her husband, who was a Major General, has unfortunately now passed away. But he was a Major General in the Seaforth Highlanders. And in 1969, because he was a direct descendant of James Rook, he was invited over to Colombia to set in some sort of celebration of their independence. And he said, well, I'd like to go, but I've just finished a 6-month tour and I don't think my wife would be too happy. So the Colombian says, well, bring your wife. So they both went out as part of a British contingent to celebrate. Anyway, they travelled all around and they insisted he wore his uniform, which of course included a kilt. And the South Americans idolised this man and loved him. And at one point, remember this is 1969, just after the 66 World Cup, one of the aides that was escorting this, well, he wasn't a Major General then obviously, but they said, do you know in South America you are more popular than Pelé? Well, of course Pelé was at the height of his fame then. So yeah, it's a fascinating story. And indeed, the family that now own the house and the estate, they would not have been in there had the man who was due to inherit it not died in the Great War. He was 19 or 20 years old, she's not quite sure which, went out to fight in 1918, nearly the end of the war. And tragically, he was killed and he couldn't inherit, so it passed to another part of the family. So, you know, and I know that, you know, you pay a certain price when you're rich by birth. People sort of resent it sometimes. Well, my opinion of that is that these families who run these large estates, first of all, they look after wonderful tracts of land and keep them pristine for the country. But they've paid their price, they've paid their debt to society with the blood of their sons. And they owe us nothing. You know, and I just think that history is the social history of Britain, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I hope you find it mildly interesting too. And that's just one family that I work for, and that echoes throughout the land, throughout the country. It's fascinating. Okay then. I should mention, of course, that you saw in the opening clip that me bringing in a patio slab. I was at work yesterday. It's Saturday morning. It's now 5:20. I've been here quite a while. Changed it to Saturday because today the weather's a little bit better than tomorrow. So yeah, I was working yesterday and the lady wanted me to cut some shrubs around a patio because she's got builders coming in to replace and extend the patio. So, you know, fortune favours the brave. I said to her, do you mind me being cheeky and asking what you're doing with the old slabs? And she said, well, I expect the builder will throw them in the skip. I said, well, I've got a van out the front. Would you mind if... So, actually, I had to go and get rid of all my work stuff. So after work, I emptied the van of it and went back and put some slabs in. It was only a small patio, so there's only a few. But it's enabled me to extend out my hard standing area around the sheds. Just so come the winter, it doesn't really make much difference now, but come the winter, this ground, obviously I traffic it a lot, and even with all the chippings, inevitably it does get soft underfoot. So that's the end of that problem around here. And I spoke to John, my friend, yesterday, and I said, look, I've got all these slabs, I don't need them all, would you like some? And he said, well, I'd love 6 of them to put along the front of my sheds, because he gets puddling in front of his sheds. And of course he's here every day all through the winter, so I'm going to keep 6 of them back. And when he gets here, I'll help him lay them in front of his sheds. So he does me a lot of favours. You know, that's the way the world works, isn't it? When I'm away, we spend a lot of time away in the caravan. He's always offering to help, and he comes over and he waters, you know, all my seedlings in my cold frames he did through the spring. So it's the very least I can do. You know, it makes me feel good about being able to offer something in return. However, I'm not holding this pen for no good reason. I have a question for you. Do you know why Bic put a hole through... Oh, excuse me. Why they put a hole through their lids? I'll tell you. When they first came out with a Bic pen, people did this, don't they? You know, when they're pondering their work or thinking about what time knockoff is, and every now and again, unfortunately, somebody would choke and swallow one of these, and they're just the right size for your airway, and they would block it, and unfortunately, people died as a result. So they put that hole in there, so that even if you're unfortunate enough or stupid enough to swallow this lid, the air will still continue to pass until such time as the emergency services can get to you and sort you out. But what an interesting little fact. Yes, there's all sorts of little design quirks in everyday stuff that we are simply not aware of. Quite interesting. Well, it's still quite early. The sun isn't really in the sky yet. But it's quiet on the site and the wind isn't too bad, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to do my usual walkabout. And as always, I start down the bottom end, and you can see that the dry weather, I would put it down to the dry weather, that some of the onions are bolted. Anyway, can't be helped. There's enough of them so far that haven't, and this week we're due some rain, so I'm hoping that the rain might help prevent others bolting. Yeah, you see there's some more just going over there. The Red Baron always bolt. But I've done some heavy watering on the rhubarb this week, so that really has perked up, so I'm going to harvest some of that today. Anyway, I was just having a look at how much water I've got left in the barrels. And these nasturtiums grow out the end of the compost heaps, and I leave them, and they always put on a lovely display. No effort to myself, which is always a good way. So the Brussels sprouts over there are coming on nicely. The French beans, a few of them have been had by the slugs, but I have got some replacements, so I'll put those in today. Tomatoes are doing well. Starting to see some flowers on those. All my squashes are in now. Let's walk this way. So let me think, what are these? Not sure if these are butternut. Let's have a look at this well placed label. Ah, right, yeah, they're the winter squash mashed potato. So there was me worrying that I wasn't going to get any, and at the moment they're looking good. One of them up the top corner has been had by a slug, but other than that they're okay. But these pea aldermen, wow, they really are coming on, and the pods are filling out now, so it won't be more than a few days before, in fact, you know, wow, that looks fantastic. Yeah, it won't be long, and then boy will we be harvesting. Cheryl will be pleased with that. She does love her peas. Back over this way, a few extra leeks I had. This is a sort of odds and sods bed, some more French beans that are looking very good. And then a few extra onions. Those are butternuts over there. That's all my butternuts, I think. No, they're not. I lied to you. I've got some more. I'll show you those in a minute. That is definitely the pumpkin bed. I know what that is. I really should do my research before I walk around my plot. You think I might know what I've planted. Yeah, so those are the pumpkins. Jack-o'-lantern, I think. Yeah, this is the leek bed. And they are starting very slowly to fill out. And more onions. The potatoes, I'm not sure if that looks like blight. What do you think? But these are Sarpomera, they're meant to be blight resistant. I think, although I think I've read somewhere in the trials that although the top growth developed blight, they continue to grow, so I'm not going to worry about it just yet. And then these are the courgettes Tromboncini, which are starting to wend their way up. And I do have, look, oh no, not that one, but somewhere on there I've seen the formation of fruit beginning. Yeah, so the beetroot Boltardi are starting to fill out. I've got tiny little beetroot under all that beautiful leaf. Some spring onions I tucked in the end. But at the moment I am cropping almost daily the strawberries. They're not big, but they are tasty. One of the big lessons this year for me has been the broad beans. These are the Acquadolce broad beans I sowed. I know I've told you this before. I sowed in the winter, or yeah, last autumn, and they grew, developed, and I'm harvesting them frantically now, and not affected by the black fly at all. These here, some of them are Acquadolce, I think, that I did in the spring, and then this crimson flowered, and the black fly are all over them. I'm not sure, I'm not sure if they're going to make it through, but I'm not too worried because we've had such a wonderful crop of the Acquadolce. Harvested the garlic, as you would have seen in my previous video. I've got some sunflowers that I've been bringing on, so I've put those in. And yeah, what else? Oh, we harvested our first courgette yesterday, and there's plenty more coming. Unfortunately, the blooming slugs keep eating the skin, but can't help that. There's another one forming there. The key is to take them small, Spinach, see the bed of spinach. I've grown all this blooming spinach and we just don't use that much. We do have smoothies every week and it goes in those. So it'll get used, but maybe not quite as much as we would like. And then the blueberries, wow, the blueberries. Can't wait for those to start bluing up. And you may have caught a glimpse of my newly extended, I'll call it a patio, shall I? Yeah, and I've got a few more that I'm just going to extend along there so that in the winter I can walk into this other shed on a hard standing. Yeah, and well, the pond is a joy. It's that sort of midsummer opulence at the moment, mostly weeds, but I don't care. It buzzes all day long with the bees, and that's the main thing. Gooseberries, again, they're small, probably down to lack of water, but so be it. And then I've got some cucumbers there. Most of them are market more, the small ones, but the bigger one there with a fruit on it developing is called Suprina. And then this is my other bed of butternuts. So, as we speak, I'm really happy with the plot. It's looking good, but more importantly, the crops are growing beautifully. The pests at the moment, don't want to tempt fate, but the pests are minimal and I can live with it. I don't mind pests taking a little bit of my crop as long as they don't decimate it and have the lot. So yeah, I'm very happy with the way things are developing. There's some rather black ominous clouds up there. Shouldn't really use a wood drill for metal, but hey ho, does the job. Quick whip around my very small but perfectly formed greenhouse shows that I've got more cucumbers just in reserve. I have another tray of the clubroot resistant brassicas, so the broccoli, cauliflower, green and red cabbages. There's some more cucumbers there. I sowed the whole packet and they all germinated. There's my green curly kale coming on there, but I need some Enviromesh back here from the allotment to plant them out in the garden. Sorry about the noise, somebody's kids playing up nearby. Some more Lolla Rossa lettuces, trying to keep the successional sowings going, which brings me on nicely to the beetroot. That's another sowing in case I get some gaps, or when I get some gaps, as is this tray of spring onions I sowed yesterday. And this is what I'm really proud of. That was a sowing of a free packet of asparagus seeds, and I've had 5 germinate. I'm really pleased with that. I don't have asparagus on the allotment, but I've decided that if this, because it was free seeds, I'd try and sow some, and if I get 5 plants, that'd be wonderful. And I've got room to put them. I'm aware it's going to be 3 years minimum before I get a crop from it, but my allotment is a long-term project, so let's see what happens. And then the tomatoes are now reaching the top of the greenhouse, so I'm nipping out the tops as the last fruit truss is set. I've got plenty of flowers, so I should get a good harvest. We've got some tomatoes already formed, and then at the base of them all I've got some basil growing. So yeah, very pleased. Like I say, it's only a 6x6, but yeah, we pack it in. That's garlic Marco. Very happy with that. Well, look what happens when you go away for a few days. Lovely lot of strawberries. That's the garlic out to dry now, and we've got a bit of freezing to do tonight with broad beans and calabrese. Well, that was a long job, but the tomatoes have now had all their new side shoots taken off, and the tomato plants have been tied back in further up. Give them a bit of added strength and support. Well, it's still early actually, but I'm going to finish the filming and get stuck into some work. A little bit different this week. Hope you enjoyed it. As we move towards the second half of the year, unbelievable. The allotment is in good order. Everything is starting to harvest, and it's an exciting time. So, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I shall see you for my 100th episode very soon. Take care, look after yourselves, bye for now.